Hey everybody, welcome back to the Beer and Skittles podcast. We are David and David, and we have a special Halloween episode for you guys this week where we're going to totally talk about everything horror, past, present, video games, TV, movies, whatever we can think about to get everybody in the spirit for Halloween.
I'd say over the last few years, we've had a huge horror resurgence, both in video games and in film. And like right now is the best time to be a fan of like all things horror.
Yeah, I mean when you think about it, every genre when it comes to, especially in movies, there's always phases. Things come in, come out. There's always those fads that come and go. When you get into the 80s and early 90s, all those classic slashers and horrors that you got that then moved into the paranormal into the 2000s and stuff, alongside with all the sequels and continuations of the old slashers that were not good. You like
Yeah.
pretty much hated by everybody in the
What's wrong
community.
with Jason X?
Well, he looks like he's made out of titanium, and they go to space.
What was wrong with Leprechaun in the Hood?
I don't know. I think it might be a metaphor for racism. Uh, Looking back on it, I just don't think it was the most PC thing. What was wrong with Scream 38? I don't even know how many more Scream movies they ended up making.
Yeah, the last one wasn't bad. Last one was not bad. Um, I will say, I think that for us to appreciate where we are right now with horror, we got to just go back a couple of years, 2017, 2018, looking at the release of Resident Evil 7 in 2017 and the release of Halloween in 2018, which I think helped just boost our return to old franchises and kind of, bringing us back into both survival horror for games and slashers for movies.
Yeah, they definitely did something for the genre that gave people wanting to watch it again or play it again, especially because there are things that are already existing. They already had existing fan bases. Whenever one of those movies, especially again, we talked about uh, all those movies in 2000s where they try to continue Halloween, Scream, Friday the 13th. They keep trying to continue them and they were bad, but everybody in the community still watch those movies because
Of
you're
course.
a fan. Of course, you're gonna watch them. Michael Myers is back on screen. Why not? Um, but they did something interesting, and especially with Halloween, um, it did something interesting not only for horror but for movies in general when it comes back to rewatching a franchise and revisiting it. Um, there's been more movies since. Like I know earlier this year there was the Ghostbusters movie that came out, which was an amazing sequel for a franchise that has been dead for many years, unless you count the girl Ghostbusters, but we
We
don't.
don't. We don't.
We don't. They didn't talk about it, so neither are we.
Yep.
Um, and then Halloween did the same thing back in 2018, where they did a soft reboot. They said, "Oh, all that in between stuff doesn't matter. You just need to know Laurie's storyline. That's all you
The
need to know."
original. We're taking John Carpenter's story and that's it.
Yeah, and it did a great job of continuing and revisiting a franchise within the time. So time has passed, a long time has passed, bringing back original cast, revisiting the original story, and continuing it with the new generation, which is kind of also a metaphor for how the movie did in general. It got fans to rewatch it, fans to rewatch that whole franchise and to get involved in it while still getting a new generation to fall in love with these characters and these stories that we got so long ago.
Yeah, and I'd say that, Capcom did the same thing with Resident Evil when they dropped Resident Evil 7. Um, Also, just forewarning everybody, there will be spoilers for like current movies that have come out this year and video games. So if you hear us name drop something that you haven't watched or seen, feel free to skip ahead. Uh, But with Resident Evil 7, which was a really big departure from other games in the series because it was now first person, which, Resident Evil's not new to changing the camera angle. They've done it numerous times in its history, but putting it in first person really changed the scope of how terrifying it was walking through the swamps. Um, and at the very end, you get a connection with Chris Redfield, and you're like, oh, wait, this is part of the larger Resident Evil world. So this isn't just a new game and,
Yeah,
we're going to
one-off
brush it off.
story,
Yeah, it was like this is connected to the bigger world, and that payoff at the end was really nice. And Resident Evil Village, which came out earlier this year, was fantastic.
Well, the one thing you have to always respect about the Resident Evil games is that they do something that a lot of franchises are afraid to do, and it's change. Um, if you go back for the original Resident Evil game to every game throughout that series, I couldn't say that any of them are exactly the same. I would not feel like I'm playing the same game twice. A lot of times the gameplay is different. The type of villains that you have are different. The characters that you have are different. The
Yep.
setting is different. They take different approaches. So like, there's times where you don't have any weapons and you're walking through a story. And then there's times where you are in full battle mode, like it's Call of Duty with a room full of zombies, depending on which game in the series you're on. And that's an amazing thing that they've had such success by not doing the same game, because people like comfort, the thing that they know. They like the first game, so they're going to like the second, third, fourth, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. But they found success in changing the game, which a lot of people are afraid to do.
Yeah, and I think even Capcom, I mean, they decided to, hey, let's remake Resident Evil 2. Let's remake one of the most popular games in the series. It's an old game, and let's redo it with current gen graphics.
Yeah.
And
they went on
over
a
the
splurge
shoulder.
of remakes for a little bit.
And they still are. We got Resident Evil 2, we got Resident Evil 3 remake, and now we're getting Resident Evil 4 remake, which is probably the most popular game in the series. So it's a huge gamble for Capcom, but they've shown that they can do this and still hold true to the original game. I'm super excited for it. But again, they've kicked off this whole, hey, remake your old horror games. We're getting a Dead Space remake, which is a game that terrified me. Like literally scared the shit out of me when I was younger.
I mean, I've seen a lot of Dead Space. I was never the one playing, because Dead Space, geez, you would know. When did Dead Space come out?
It was one of the first games to come out on PS3 when PS3 launched.
Yeah. So when PS3 launched, I was playing like the Amazing Spider-Man video game. I wasn't really playing Dead Space, but I was around you who was playing a lot of Dead Space. So I'm very familiar with the story between Dead Space 1 and Dead Space 2. And it's probably this game that I've heard you talk about, probably like top 3. Like it's up there with, like, I think for you, Destiny and Kingdom Hearts. I don't think I've ever heard you talk about another game as much as you have Dead Space. And it's been so long since you played it. So I think it tells a lot to how good it is to the genre.
I just have such vivid memories of, like, I remember getting Dead Space. Like, I remember when I got the PS3, I couldn't even buy Dead Space because I was underage. Like, I couldn't buy it. I remember Dad had to get the game for me. And he was like, "You gonna play this game?" After like describing to him what it was, I'm like, "Yeah, hell yeah, I'm gonna play this game." Yeah, I got home and I played it for about 20-30 minutes and turned it off because I was like, "Yep, nope." And I don't think I didn't touch the game for months. And when I found, I was like, you know what, I need a game to play. I should really go back and replay this. And I had to restart it because I couldn't remember any of the controls. I was way past the intro tutorial of the game. And I would do like one section a day during daylight hours because I was like, yep, nope, I couldn't handle it. And I can't wait to play the remake.
Yeah, I mean, it was a cool game for them, especially because when you think of horror games, and I think it really is a big inspiration for games that we do have nowadays. When you talk about Dead by Daylight, which is a different game, that whole running around, you don't have much that you can do, there you have a certain amount of space. That whole aspect kind of lived and breathed in Dead Space.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because if you look at Dead Space, just Resident Evil wasn't on the uptrend at the time. Um, Dead Space was at that time, kind of a return to survival horror. And it's funny now that like Resident Evil has kicked it back off, and now we're back to getting Dead Space again. Um, but there's so many other games that are getting remade. Silent Hill just announced 4 new games. Silent Hill 2 being a remake for one of them, and 3 brand new games within that franchise. And that's insane. And there hasn't been a Silent Hill game in years. So to finally like revisit that and get back into that, you mentioned Dead by Daylight. That's the last time I remember seeing Silent Hill recently was when they added Pyramid Head and as a killer.
Yeah. And Dead by Daylight has been taking huge strides, I think, for horror and video games. Like you said, kicked off by because it wasn't as popular before Resident Evil 7. But since it's been out, it's probably one of the games that I see most on streaming, behind like Fortnite, Call of Duty. Dead by Daylight is up there with some of the most streamed. It just people are in love with the content. It gives people great reactions because again, it has that survival horror aspect to it, which always gets great reactions. Obviously, you play survival horror games, you're gonna have a reaction.
It's somewhere. Dead by Daylight is somewhere in between kind of a survival horror, but you're working together with other people, doesn't make it any less terrifying. But it also has the elements of like Outlast, where you actually can't fight back in the same way you can in Resident Evil or in Dead Space. But in Outlast is like the other game in recent memory, newer than Dead Space, that just terrifies me to no end. Like I won't even. I've played through those games once each. No desire to return and replay Outlast, because the ability to not fight back and only have a camcorder where you're just recording and you can turn on night vision to be able to see in the dark. Yeah, no, thank you. I want nothing to do with it.
It's an insane element, because when you think about a horror movie, you never have a horror movie where people are fighting back. It's not how horror movies work. You don't fight back against what it is unless you're Survivor Girl in the last scene. But other than that, you don't see anybody fight back, and those can be scary enough. Now imagine being the character, which is what makes horror video games so much more intense, because when you're in the movie and you're saying, don't open that door, you still have to be the one to open that door when you're playing the video game.
And it's active. It's so active. And I watch a lot of horror movies, this, and it's hard to find a horror movie that scares me. It's hard to find one that really freaks me out. Video games still manage to do that because it's active. I can put the remote down and be like, you know what, I need a break, but I'm still in the same place. If it's a movie, you can just cover your eyes and the monster will show up and then it'll be gone, and you can keep watching till the end and you'll be fine. You'll get through it. You can't do that in a horror game. It's like
you have to put yourself within that situation. I mean, there's always that trope, someone in the movie theater yelling, don't do it, he's right there, he's right there, and when you're playing the video game too, and you're like, but I have to, like, I have to. And so you're anticipating it, and I think what's even worse is when you're anticipating it and nothing happens, because then you're like, you had a heart attack for no reason.
It's the dread that builds, and then you like turn the corner, even when you watch a movie and nothing's there. You're like, oh Jesus, well, because now you anticipate it and you're like, okay, so when is it happening? And now you just don't know. And I think horror movies have gotten better with like the fake out of like, not doing the jump scare right where you think it is and then catching you off guard. And I appreciate the off guard jump scare rather than I know it's behind the closet, and then it is. You're like, I knew it.
I know it. Yeah. Freaking I remember, I'm forgetting the name. You're gonna know as soon as I say it, because we revisited this about a year ago when we were on vacation. we have a little cousin, and like he's older. He's starting to get older, so like we were showing him horror games while we were on vacation with him. And we were like describing, it was a demo.
Oh, PT.
Yes, PT.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were describing the demo for PT because that came out, a game that was never actually released. And the demo was even out for not that long of a time either. So if you had it, like you kept it because it was amazing. And I remember when it first came out, we were all sitting in the living room. You played it first, and like I couldn't even watch, and then you guys forced me to play that game, and
Yeah,
it
no,
was
it's
terrifying because it's that same thing where you are not expecting it. You're the entire time you're expecting something, nothing is happening, absolutely
it
nothing.
is
And such an environment was genius. The environment for it was genius because you're
it's just
constantly anticipating.
and it's just a hallway.
Yeah,
It is one of the most genius, and it's just a demo, and it is like one of the best like horror entries as a video game ever. And it's just a hallway. You go in
just
one door
hallway.
and you open up and you're like back at the beginning, and it's just that
And
loop.
there's the noises too. A big thing with horror is the Foley and the soundtrack. You come
Yep.
in and you get like a vibration on your controller, and the sound in your headphones, and it's like a heartbeat, and it's getting faster and faster the closer you get to a certain landmark. And then you get around the corner and nothing's there, and it goes
Yep.
silent and everything's quiet, and then you turn around and there's something behind you when everything already went quiet. So
Yes.
your heart rested, so then it shoots back up again. It's a science and a formula to everything that they do.
I remember playing PT and throwing my controller, um, because it and I remember the part. It was I was standing by the radio and it was just talking. I was listening to it, trying to figure like what is happening here. What is the
Yeah.
backstory? And the radio's like, look behind you, and I was like, whatever, I'm ignoring it, I'm just listening to the radio. And then it was like, I said look behind you, and I turned the camera around and fucking there was the monster in my face through the controller. I was done. um yeah.
Yeah.
PT. PT.
That was an insane one. But so we were telling our little cousin about that, and he was like, how scary could it be? Because he's a kid growing into like a teenager, so he's like, what, like, no, that. So
Yeah.
then we scoured the internet finding the gameplay for it, and it still lives up to this day.
Oh yeah,
To this
no,
day, it still lives up to the hype
it's
that I have in my head from when I was a kid. And I'm like, and I was like, this was it. This is you watching somebody play it. You playing
yeah.
it is an entirely different story.
Yeah, no, and there is like a huge thing right now. Like people, there are a lot of people that can't, like, a lot of people don't like watching horror movies, right? Because they feel
Mm.
like they're in it themselves. But there's another large group of people who can't play horror games because, like we said, it's active. So right now, a lot of people love watching other people play through a horror game because they'll get the experience of like seeing what the game is about, getting the story, but also the reaction of somebody freaking out as they
Yes.
play is hilarious. Um, so there's just so much right now is happening that's like keeping the genre just like here right now, and I love it.
Yeah. And just as we are having this resurgence for horror video games, we've also been having the resurgence in the movie world that we said took place with Halloween. We've had a new Scream and Chucky come out within the past year. So revisiting franchises that again have been dead for so long.
And I think Halloween kicked off this trend of like, let's revisit the franchise. And Halloween did it a little bit different, like you said, where they are, cutting off everything after the first movie. Everything after the original doesn't matter. This is a direct sequel to the original John Carpenter movie. Scream and Chucky are fully embracing everything that's come before, and even poking fun at some of like the stupidity and stuff that like just didn't work in some of these, sequels, but
Well, they're
fully
very
embracing it.
uh those movies in general, that their entire series were different
Yeah.
Michael Myers in the Halloween movies was pure slasher at the height of being a slasher. Like, and these movies came out a little after, so they played into comedy and playing on the tropes. I mean, Scream's whole thing was tropes, playing
Yeah.
into the tropes. Don't do this trope, but we're still gonna do this trope because we're idiot teenagers in a horror movie. So that was their whole thing. Chucky did the whole thing where Chucky ended up being comedy by the time it was done. Started out being a
And
little
not
more
so,
serious
and
and then comedy.
not so much anymore, but it's funny. Chucky, a lot of people like will attribute like, oh, Chucky added this like comedic factor to whatever. And it's like, if you actually look at it, go back and look at Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger
Well,
added this element of comedy to the slasher because Michael, Leatherface, Jason, silent slashers. They don't, and
then you have the serial killer with quips.
which is like, and it didn't make Freddy any less terrifying
No,
when he would just show up, and, hey bitch, and then just like clawed somebody. You know what I mean? It was insane.
but I think it gave you something after the fact.
Yeah,
That's what it gave you something extra to think about. Like, hey bitch, like it was
yeah, yeah.
funny. Like in the moment, you might not have laughed because you'd be like, oh shit, like this
You're like,
girl's
oh,
insides are hanging out of her body.
and then you're
But
like,
then
wait,
after the
what
fact,
did
you're
he
like,
say?
hey bitch, wait,
What did he say to her?
what did he say?
I think this year we've had a lot of really good horror movies though. Prey was, in my opinion, one of the best Predator movies since the original. Um,
I see. This is where I think we disagree on Prey.
I absolutely loved it. Do you know it is the highest rated Predator movie, even higher than the original?
Oh, where on Rotten Tomatoes?
Actually, I think everywhere has rated it as like the
I
best Predator movie. It's
I just
amazing.
I don't see that much in it.
I
I
I
wasn't that much of a fan, and to me, like the Predator itself felt lackluster to me.
No, but it's older, and honestly,
It's older,
watching,
but you have flashbacks in like the old uh Alien versus Predator movies and Predator movies where they show thousands of years ago that predators have like laser guns and stuff, and like it doesn't mean like that
yeah.
predator just felt dumb. Like
I mean,
it felt
listen,
like he was way too easily outsmarted.
I don't think he was easily outsmarted. Did you see him slaughter those Frenchmen? Come
Yeah,
on, come on. And he still had the tech. The only thing he was missing was the like plasma aspect of the laser gun because it was the dart. Um, but like watching this Predator movie makes me want like more of these standalone Predator movies where like almost like Assassin's Creed, pick a time period, pick a place in the world, drop a Predator. That's what I want. I want more movies where we're just like, oh yeah, let's go to ancient Rome and just drop a Predator into the Colosseum and like, you know what I mean? And like give me that story. Standalone. Doesn't have to connect. Just Predator comes down to hunt. I think it would be amazing.
I think it could work. I wasn't just I wasn't that impressed with the newest Prey, the newest movie in the Predator series. Um, it just I feel like it didn't hit on all the marks that I'd hoped for. Um, and I know Predator was always very action with the mix
Yeah,
of gore, so it wasn't always true horror. It wasn't like when Alien first came out. When Alien first came out, that was more on
it
like
is.
your
It's
horror
it's the
side.
dread and the isolation and Alien. Yeah, the
Yeah,
claustrophobia, the tightness of the ship. You're right. Predator does is a little bit more action.
it's a little more action. I would love to see it border more onto that horror line, because I think it's the Predator is just so much more well equipped for that. I mean, when you're on the alien ship, I'm sure it's creepy and it's scary. Everything's black, it's dark. You have nothing, but you have this being that you stand no chance of that can blend into everything, sees you no matter where you are or what you're doing, and it is complete with action, strength, speed, stealth, anything you can think of, and it is
Yeah,
on your ass. I
yeah.
feel like it's missing a huge opportunity to step more into that horror field. I think the problem is with Predators that it always gives them a more like a valiant effort from the character. Somebody that, they're not formidable to a predator, but they're made out to be formidable to a predator.
Yeah.
A Native American, well, while she was a girl, not a hunter, she's shown to be intelligent, experienced, and can
Yeah.
fight and all this stuff, and then you go all the way back to the originals and military, like these guys. So it
Are at the top of
becomes
their league. Yeah.
yeah, it becomes action. And I think if you just kind of did Predator doing what it does is just being a predator and preying on those that may not be or might be less experienced or might just be weak, and just letting that horror element flow, I think would actually benefit the series a little more.
I mean, it gets tough because part of the whole Predators thing is it only hunts what it thinks is a formidable foe, because that's what it lives on. It's the hunt for them. But I do think I think they could lean closer into the horror aspects of it and make a scarier movie for sure. You mentioned the gore of Predator and like the earlier movies.
Yeah.
And this year did give us some pretty gory movies as well. The new Hellraiser, which is, in my opinion, amazing. It's actually the last like classic slasher film to get a remake, and the female Pinhead is just like amazing. At first I was skeptical, and like it works so well in like the final product. Did you ever watch Sense8?
Yes, I watched Sense8.
Okay, so you remember the character Nomi?
Yeah.
She is Pinhead.
Really?
That's her.
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
I didn't even realize. I watched a video of them doing the like the makeup on her and everything and how long it took, the sped up version of it. And I was like, oh shit, that's her. We also got Terrifier 2, and stupid movie. In my opinion, the story just doesn't make sense. It's not there
for me.
But that is one of the goriest movies I've ever seen. And the practical effects.
Well, gore is neither here nor there. It's an asset, and it can be your downfall. We're talking about horror, and I think you lean a lot into paranormal and survival and all that stuff when it comes to horror. I'm big slasher. I'm big into the slasher genre. That's always what I've been into. So to me, gore is an art form, and it has to be used properly. If you're gonna have a movie that's gonna be all out gore, I hope it looks real, it looks practical, and I hope that it's going to be an asset to your movie, but not the only thing in your movie. Because it doesn't save you. It's a huge boost, and it makes people like me want to fanboy, but it doesn't save you. But sometimes it hurts because
it doesn't make a story.
It doesn't make a story. Yeah. And sometimes you add it in there because you think that's what the audience wants, but it isn't. The cat. But it isn't. And we mentioned already that, John Carpenter 2018 Halloween was the revitalization, but since then we've gotten 2 new movies. And what I loved about the original 2018 John Carpenter was that it lived up to what I had for the feeling of the original Halloween movie. When they were making the original Halloween, they wanted it to feel like a novel. They didn't have a huge budget. This was a movie that wasn't even supposed to happen. They had no shot for this movie to happen, and it was by pure luck. They had like no money, they had nothing going on. By pure luck, they were able to actually get this created and make something out of it. So they wanted to make it feel like a novel because they felt the best way to convey these emotions would be to use your imagination. Michael almost never kills on screen. You get that eerie effect of him in a doorway. You see the shadow, which is why he always gets the nickname the Shadow, the figure, because you always just see him just swiftly, smoothly walking past.
I will say one of the things that I loved about one of the only things I loved about the newest Halloween movie was when Laurie's writing at the beginning, and she, the shape of evil. You know, she when she keeps like erasing that line and she finally writes it up, the shape of evil. And
Yeah,
I'm like, that's a great callback. That's a great nod to John Carpenter's original name, like for this evil.
yeah. But and that's what I loved about the original Halloween movies. It took that approach of imagination. You didn't see him kill. You saw the eeriness. You saw the feeling that people would get if they saw him. Then you saw him leave, and then you pan past and you saw a body on the floor. You
See, and that's
saw the
why
gore after the fact, and that was the beauty of it. Because then you're like, "Oh, this happened." But after 2018, so it was 2021 and then 2022 at Halloween ends, was when they came out with these movies. They got much gorier, and I just feel like it's not true to the franchise.
see,
So I think in
and
this case it hurts.
I know you don't like Halloween Kills, but I really enjoyed Halloween Kills, and I
Well, I
loved.
now there's a difference. I don't hate Halloween Kills. I don't. I think it was not properly executed and it didn't stay as true to the franchise. But I loved the themes that it promoted, and I love like the feeling that I got after watching that movie was great. When I first watched Halloween Kills, it was in the drive-in, and it was a double feature of Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills, and it was amazing because I saw them back to back at a drive-in at night, like in the fall around Halloween. There's no better atmosphere
Yeah,
to watch a horror movie, um, and I loved it. I loved the parts of it, like when they were in the hospital, when the mob forms, all of those things. So the themes I liked.
so I
The movie
love
as a
the themes of
whole,
that movie,
not exactly.
but also you cannot tell me the opening to Halloween Kills, right? I
Oh,
get
when he
it.
gets the couple.
No, 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 no.
Oh, the
Because
firefighters.
the firefighters, because it
Firefighters were
opens with the
first.
ending.
Yeah,
That, bro, you cannot tell me that is an insane opening because
insane. It was absolutely absurd.
it plays into, you know, that element that they introduced into the series later on, after the original, where like Michael just doesn't go down. Like he gets shot in the face and he doesn't go down. And it's like you had how many firefighters outside that house, and he just slaughtered all of them.
Yeah, and then he ends up, and then afterwards there's a couple, and if you see what he does to the old man, oh
Yeah,
God.
yeah,
Again, the gore was impressive. It was impressive in the movie, but it didn't fit the movie that I and the genre that I fell in love with Halloween, because that's what made it different. That's what made Halloween so successful, was that we don't need to show you gore for you to know what happened. You use your
yeah.
imagination, you figure it out. That's what separated it from movies like Friday the 13th and all the classics that were surrounding it, was that we're going to give you almost nothing and you are still going to love it because of the story that we're promoting, and the your imagination is going to tell the rest of it for you.
That's true. And you know, it's one of those things too from old movies, because you know they couldn't show a lot of gore like that back then because of the ratings and you know what wasn't allowed on screen. Um, but it's almost like those rules were almost beneficial to creating a super terrifying atmosphere. Um, it's similar to like when they made Jaws, when Steven Spielberg made Jaws. You know, the shark was supposed to be in the movie a lot more, but because it kept sinking and they were having problems getting it to float and they had problems with the actual like shark mannequin they made, it got cut and the shark only appears a couple of times in the movie. But that dread of not knowing where it is and just the music of playing of like, oh my god, it's somewhere around here, it's here, but not actually seeing it worked better than like the initial plan.
Yeah, the suspense is what gets to you.
Yeah,
Not
and like,
seeing it is almost worse, because when you start seeing it
yeah,
all the time, it becomes almost like action. But we
oh,
don't
you
want
just, you're like, oh yeah,
action.
it's this shark. Oh
Oh,
yeah,
he's back.
there's the killer. Yeah, exactly.
You get that. You might get that. Oh shit moment. You know that moment where something happens, something crazy in a horror movie, or in Jaws, where like someone might get ate by a shark or attacked.
Yeah.
It's about, and when they pop up, oh shit, that moment. But then that moment comes and goes in 2 seconds. But that
Heck,
feeling lasts a lot longer, which is what keeps people interested in that movie.
yeah. And it's also like, you know, you look at some older, even horror, a lot of times we pull away, right? You go to see the kill, it pulls away, then you see like the corpse, the remains. You see like the aftermath of it. And then you get movies nowadays that where special effects have come so far. Terrifier
They
2,
want to show you everything.
Saw, and you see the camera holds and it makes you watch the mutilation, and it's unsettling. And it's an element that can be used in horror, like you said.
Yeah,
it doesn't make a story, but
it's where you can expect it from. There's a show on Netflix. It's literally just called Slasher. It's like American Horror Story style, where it just, each season is different. They're not connected, but they have the same vibe. That's all it is. They all have the same vibe, and that's the entire show. And that is a show, especially the first season, it's like gory. Okay. Second season is like, all right, pushing the envelope. Third season is like, had me wanting to turn away a couple times, and that's not something I ever do.
Yeah.
So and so something like that, that's what it was made for. That's what that show was made for, to show gore, to push that envelope, and to just give you some of the bloodiest scenes you can imagine. And while it still did have actually good killers, good story, I did enjoy watching it. And just, it was oh shit moment after oh shit moment on top of each other, piled on, so it kept you interested because it was constantly there. But I did like the characters, and I did like what they did with it. So again, it doesn't make the story, but it helps in certain cases.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tool. It's like, it's the same as playing the music, the theme song, to show you the killer's there, and then they're not. It's just a tool that you use to scare somebody a little bit, or put them in the right frame of mind. But you can't rely on it too heavily. Like you said, it's like if you had the monster throughout the whole movie, it's not scary anymore.
Yeah.
So the other big horror movie that came out this year that ended up disappointing a lot of people, the same way that Halloween Ends did, was Nope. I'm not one of those people. I was disappointed with Halloween Ends, was not disappointed with Nope. I think people were expecting a more trippy movie coming off of Get Out and Us, but Nope is a straight up monster movie, and I absolutely loved it. And it's like, can we get more of that? Like, there was a time where Godzilla and King Kong were like horror characters. Like they were terrifying, and now they're action. They're like Predator. They're action stars. But even like classic horror movies, you go back, Dracula, The Mummy, Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon. Like, can we get more like monster flicks?
Yeah. And another thing, and it's not really horror because it's made by Disney, but Werewolf by Night was another one that came out. It was pure monster movie. It was black and white to pay homage to, again, all those old school like Frankenstein and all those monster movies that we got before. It was another one. It was very good. It was a great movie. It was a monster movie. It was classic. It felt real. The practical effects were amazing, which is something we just don't get enough of anymore.
Yeah, and I think maybe we'll see a resurgence of that. That would be pretty cool. And aside, like from the remakes and stuff, like Nope was an original, and there were a couple of other original horror movies that came out this year that I think were really good. And I hope we do. Like, I love revisiting franchises. I love seeing characters that I grew up with just as much as the next person. But getting original stories like Barbarian, which I thought was super creepy, was very well done. Black Phone was just a great movie. I thought it was like it was like more of a thriller, but I thought it was just extremely well done. The story was fantastic. So getting more of that original stuff, I just hope.
Yeah, I mean, original content is not even just in the horror genre and movies in general. I think is a big issue nowadays. A lot of people, it's very easy, and it's the blockbuster. It's the age of blockbusters, and the easiest way to make a blockbuster is to take an existing franchise because it already has a fan base. It's the formula nowadays, and it shows across all genres, not just like in action. So it's hard to get that kind of content. And I find myself liking a lot of more original content better. You don't have a comparison. You have a fresh idea, something new, something that was just implanted in your head. Uh, it comes a lot better. And it also comes better to criticism, because
Yeah.
when you get critics, they're always going to want to compare what you just did to whatever the original was.
Yeah,
Now you are the original. 20 years from
exactly.
now, maybe somebody can get compared to you. And I think that's a feat in and of itself. So you
And
like
I
original content is great.
and I think that's the same with, horror video games. As much as I love this idea of revisiting and replaying, getting a remake and going back into a franchise and replaying the original stuff, but also getting brand new IPs is key, because as much as I'm going to love replaying Dead Space, I can't wait to play Callisto Protocol, which I think is going to just terrify me. That game actually just it's not getting released in Japan.
No.
It will not pass in its current form their ratings board, so it's not getting released in Japan. That excites me. It's like, yes, this game is going to terrify me. um we're getting a remake of Alone in the Dark, which is the original survival horror. That's dope. um you know Going back to Silent Hill again, that's awesome. But getting a new game, um like Scorn just came out, that is like this whole body horror and biomechanical. That's awesome. I love seeing the original ideas and the original IPs that can deliver new scares, and it's not something that I'm already expecting, already used to.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Franchises are cool, and you always get the most hype about franchises, but there's nothing better like going into something that you have no idea what it is. You might get excited or something because it looks that good, but you don't have such high hopes because why are your hopes so high in the first place? Like if I get a new Far Cry game, my hopes are high. I
Yeah.
love these games, and just any franchise that I've already grown accustomed to and I love. Oh, now my hopes are high for it. But when you get into something, you're like, oh, it looks good. Let me get it. And then you are addicted to it and you go
Yeah.
all nighter playing a game. It's a better feeling because I can get a new Far Cry or I can get a new Assassin's Creed
But
or
then when
any
it's
one of
not
these.
good and you're like, oh
You're
man, the
disappointed.
third one was better, and it doesn't meet your
Yeah.
expectations, you're
Doesn't
just
meet your
like,
expectations at all.
you're let down. Um, the letdown's not as bad when it's uh, a brand new IP, I feel
Yeah, and
like.
I also feel myself not binging a game as much when it's part of
Yeah.
a franchise because I've done it.
Yeah.
We talked earlier, it was Resident Evil changes their games a lot, which keeps it fresh.
Yep.
Even though I love certain game series, and I think they're classic and they can never be replaced, and I don't think they'll ever be bad. It's I've done it 100 times, so like I'll play for 2 hours. I'm not gonna all nighter Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
I've done Assassin's Creed.
You're going to take your
I
time
couldn't
with
even
it.
count
Yeah.
the amount of hours that I've put into all of these Assassin's Creed games. So, it's cool to just get something new, but people are afraid to do it as well. But it also makes the most sense from a studio perspective. Well, they pulled in X amount of money last year. So, when we finish this project, it'll do the same thing. The money in
That's
our
the thing.
pocket. Let's go.
That's the thing. If we're as long as it's making money, we're just going to keep doing it. Um, so we've talked about this before. Knowing when to stop is a very important like skill.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and unfortunately it's a skill that like the slasher genre for a long time just,
Did not. Nope.
yeah,
They
nope.
should have.
Yep.
For a
Jason
long
went to
time.
space.
Jason went to space. Went to New
Actually, I
York.
think Leprechaun did too.
I
Did he
don't
not?
know. I don't know. It was bad enough when Jason went to New York. Like why the fuck is he in New York? And then like now we top this. How do we give this the Fast and Furious treatment before Fast and Furious even came out? And they
Yeah.
were like, send him to space. Then let's also send him to hell and then bring him back. Wait, hold on.
What? What is happening here?
What is happening
Uh,
here? I have no idea. Let's make
yeah,
him go against Freddy. Like I just anything.
I think there's should also, you know, I think we should get a little more crossover. Um, there's been some really great horror games based on like movie franchises, like Alien Isolation, terrifying game. Um, I don't think we've gotten a like great horror movie based on a game, but John Carpenter recently talked about doing Dead Space, and I think that would be amazing. It would be cool to see more horror games get the live action treatment as long as it stays true and does the actual horror and not, the action that Resident Evil tries to do every time they do a movie.
Yeah, I am
But the
watching them.
same, like,
I'm not watching any more Resident Evil movies.
give me we're seeing it, like we're getting there's an Evil Dead game out, that we're getting a Killer Clowns from Outer Space game. Texas Chainsaw Massacre's getting one, and Dead by Daylight is constantly licensing new characters into their game. So that stuff could be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I do like when actually horror movies get games. I know this was a couple years ago now, that it was a Friday 13th game when it was
Yep.
the co-op where it was everybody trying to hide from Jason. And I like that idea too, where you basically get that Dead by Daylight feeling, but you're playing against each other instead of
Yeah.
with each other, which gives an entirely different vibe to what you want to do.
The more I think about it, if Dead by Daylight wanted to do something different, a new game mode that could be cool, give us a Alien versus Predator, Freddy versus Jason type of game mode where we can have killer versus killer instead of the survivors.
Well,
That would
do
be dope.
do you remember the Alien vs Predator game?
Yeah.
This was a while ago. The Alien vs Predator game, where there was three teams, which was different at the time because it was if you were in because that was like a Call of Duty type of base, like shooting game. Um, it was one team versus one team, so there's three
Yeah.
teams. There's Alien, Predator, and
And the
humans.
humans.
So if you were a human, you had I forget the numbers, but let's say you had like 10 people per team, and then the aliens had 5, but then the Predators got 2 because
Yeah.
each person is more capable than the other. So then you're working together, but then there's still that horror element too, where again the Predator can blend in. They're up on the ceiling, and and you're down there as a person just with a gun. Like usually, if you were on the human team, you wanted to shoot yourself in the foot for it.
Yeah. Well, and then your aliens, I mean, like, they blend in with the shadows because even though they're not camouflage, I mean, they're pitch black.
Yeah,
And
because
it's,
usually I'm pretty sure you're on the alien ship for
yep.
the map. So yeah, they blended in with everything.
And they can walk on the walls and the ceilings. And then, like, you get the acidic blood. And it's seeing, is not that like Freddy versus Jason or Alien versus Predator are great horror movies. They're cool movies. They're fun. Horror crossover is like really fun. Like it can be.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get a crossover, like you're gonna get hype. Of course, you're gonna get hype about it. I mean, you get two things that you love doing, together. Like it could be bad, but it's fun. It's like instant nostalgia for you.
It is one of those things that like when you get bad, a lot of like the bad movies that you enjoy that are like good, for me, they tend to be like bad horror movies that I'm like, hey, this movie was bad. I like it.
Yeah, there is some. Yeah, and I do actually find enjoyment in watching bad movies sometimes.
Yeah,
just
the
for the
cult
fact,
classics.
yeah, there is enjoying movies, and then there's always guilty pleasure movies and stuff. That like there's movies that you like that are bad. Like you always have to preface with, I know they're bad, but
hear me out. I love this.
Hear me out. Hear me out. All right. So everybody always has that, and like in the horror genre, it was really a thing for a while. And I know we talked about the newest Scream being out again in the past year. New Scream came out, which is what kind of made Scream so great, where it wasn't bad. The new Scream was the original Screams weren't bad at all. But it took those tropes of bad and
Yeah.
it made them
It pokes fun at them.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it pokes fun at them, makes them good. I originally watched the first Scream movie probably when I was like 11 or 12 or whatever. And I don't think I've seen it since, or at least that might have been the last time I watched it. I might have seen it before then, but I didn't revisit it because, classic movie, seen it a couple times. Who needs to see it again? I watched it again recently because I love to dive into classics around Halloween time. Especially, like I said, my favorite thing is to go to the drive-in during the month of October because they do a lot of horror marathons, and it's favorite part of the month. So I rewatched Scream for the first time in 10 years. And the feeling I got watching it was amazing because it was so different and so fresh from anything I even have now that imagine when it first came out, why it became such a cult classic, because it's not the most genius thing in the world, but because it literally tells you everything that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And yet you're still surprised when it does, because you don't think it's going to head in the direction that it tells you it's going to go in. Why would it do that? It's a great feeling that it gives you throughout. It pokes fun at all of these classic horror movies and such, and it just is a great feeling. It was a great watch, and it really passed by smoothly.
No. Yeah, no, it's the just like the like it took the tropes that, like, it wasn't original, but it took that stuff and like made it original. Like it respun it.
Like they even say, they're like, so someone try to kill her. It's got to be the boyfriend. It's gotta be the one, and then they shoo it off, and they're like, that's what the trope is saying. But let's think about other options,
Yeah.
So it says it like the first person they pick is the boyfriend, and then guess what? Then they take your attention off the boyfriend, and they do everything else that all the horror movies do, and then they bring it back. It was the boyfriend. Oh wow.
Yeah,
we knew this in the first scene, and then we totally forgot about it because you were just.
It's that murder mystery aspect that that Scream like introduced, and it works.
It works so well, and I remember. It was so weird because, MTV doesn't usually make great television. But I remember when the Scream show came out, and I was like, oh, Scream show, like, let me watch it. And I actually ended up loving that show so much.
Like the first 2 seasons were good.
The first two seasons. We're not going to talk about the third one. The first 2 seasons.
Pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it didn't happen. But it was so good because, especially for on television, this wasn't streaming. There's a decent amount of gore in that show.
Yeah,
there's a good amount of gore in that show for being aired on television. And it was, again, not pay-per-view, not streaming. This was TV.
It was just weekly. regular television. Yeah,
decent amount of gore there, and it played in, again, because I haven't seen the original Scream in so long. So rewatching that made me want to rewatch the show, because now I'm like looking back, I'm like, oh, I love how these actually play off each other. It's so many things in the show that I probably missed because it's like exact references from the original movie.
The self-awareness of Scream is just like
it's fantastic.
Granted,
did it go downhill a bit? Yeah, it did, because you can only make fun of the other movies so long that it's you're just, at some point you're making fun of yourself the entire time as well. And then it kind of loses its wow there, because you're like, you're doing the same thing now. Like at first it was original because you're bagging on it by doing it, but now you've been doing it for too long.
You need a new shtick.
You're a comedian that never changed his set list from the 90s. Like, it's
exactly. I think at the end of the day, right now, if you are a horror fan, take the good with the bad, with anything and everything. But right now, I'd say is, again, just the best time to be a horror fan. Movies, TV, video games, like, just there's so much content out there right now to scare you. And
different ways to indulge, and even those who are watching that aren't a horror fan, there's so many different aspects of the genre that you can get into, because not everything is necessarily scary. uh Jordan Peele
Yeah.
does a great job of not making terrifying movies that are just really great movies with great plot lines, but still give you the same characteristic of horror. Or, if you're not huge into horror, go into thriller. It's the adjacent, it's the sister genre to horror.
Yep.
Different ways to visit it. If you're not into jump scares, I'm not big into jump scares and paranormal horror and supernatural horror and all that stuff. So I visit slashers. So there's a lot of different subgenres within horror to get into that I think anybody can find their little niche, because horror really is a cult community.
So broad.
And it's a really cult community where people that love it, they love it, and it's a fun group to be a part of. So those that aren't are really missing out.
100%. I don't know what it is that draws people to, like, for fans of horror, I don't know what draws us to just wanting to be scared, but that's what I look for when I go into a horror movie. When I play a game, it's like, all right, I hope this scares me, and I hate every second of it when it does, but
every second of it.
But it doesn't stop me from, like, new horror movie, hope it scares me. Like, I'm going into it, I'm getting it, and I hope it does just that. And I don't know what that is. If anybody has an explanation for what draws us to that, like wanting to be scared, please let me know. Maybe I can understand myself a little bit better.
Yeah, some kind of psychology behind that I don't know.
But I think that covers about everything.
Yeah. We covered the old, the new, hopefully some things in the future. Just anything horror, and during this time in the season for horror. So thank all of you guys for tuning into this episode of the Beer and Skittles podcast. And we want to wish you guys all a happy Halloween. This should be releasing day before or on Halloween. So everybody have a happy Halloween, and I hope you guys hear some things we say and just kind of binge some horror before the time of year is over.
Yeah, binge this episode, and hopefully you get scared.
Oh, we should also just outro this with just the Halloween theme song, just because it's a banger.
Oh, it is fantastic. It is such a good, probably the best horror soundtrack. It's my Halloween.
It's my walking down the street music. I'm gonna make an outro for us out of that song. Just because my favorite thing to walk down the street.
John Carpenter.
To. Yes.
Yep.
All right. Thank you
everyone for tuning in.